figured that's what I had to check. Call the meeting to order. I'd like to begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty, justice for all. Mr. Otter, can I call the roll, please?
Mr. Norris.
Here.
Ms. Thies.
Here.
Ms. Wager. Mr. Wilson. Ms. Wilson.
Here.
Mr. Thompson.
Here.
Mr. Loudermilk.
Here. Thank you. Moving on, we have before us corrections to the journal of the preceding meetings, if needed. You have in your packet the May 4th, 2021 Sunshine meeting. Please state any changes that need to be made to those meeting minutes. And we will make the necessary corrections if there are any. If there are none, I would entertain a motion at this time.
President Loudermilk,
Councilman Norris,
I make a motion to approve the minutes as received.
thank you.
Second.
So we have a motion on the floor by Councilman Norris to approve the minutes as they are listed, a second by Councilman Thompson. Are there any comments or questions before we move on? Having none, I ask for a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Norris.
Aye.
Ms. Thies.
Aye.
Ms. Wager.
Aye.
Ms. Wilson.
Aye.
Mr. Thompson.
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Next, we have the meeting minutes for the May 11th, 2021 regular meeting of the County Council. Again, please review those if you have not already done so, and make notations of any corrections that need to be made. If there are any corrections, please state so at this time. If there are none, I would then entertain a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
So moved.
Second.
So we have a motion on the floor by Councilman Thompson, a second by Councilwoman Wilson. Any questions or comments before we proceed? Mr. Otter, can I have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Norris.
Aye.
Ms. Thies.
Aye.
Ms. Wager.
Aye.
Ms. Wilson.
Aye.
Mr. Thompson.
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Moving on, public comment. Does not appear as though there is anyone here from the public. Next, communications from elected officials, other officials, or agencies of the county. Does anyone like to speak at this time? I just will say something just briefly. I passed to each of you a condolence card from our local office of Community and Rural Affairs, offering condolences for the passing of Councilman Morris. So we appreciate that, obviously, and glad they were thinking of us to send that card. So thank you for that. Moving on, reports from committees. There are none. Next, annual tax abatement compliance review, which is ROC 2021-031. You should have an insert labeled at the top, Annual Abatement Review, June 2021. The insert is outside of the packet, in addition to the packet. If you do not, please let me know. And although this might be kind of long, I think it's probably appropriate to go one by one here. And if we feel that each of these is compliant individually, we can offer a motion to approve and suggest that it is substantially in compliance. If you feel that there's one that is not in compliance and would like further explanation as to why maybe they are not in compliance, then we can move forward and suggest that they come to a hearing, which would presumably be the sunshine meeting in August, to state why they are not in compliance, or maybe offer further explanation for the council before we were to approve that individual abatement. So before we begin, are there any thoughts or questions? Okay, we'll get right to it. So the first one we have, it's on page 4 in the booklet, regarding personal property. Steel Dynamics, Heartland LLC. You have the information there before you, the Form CF1. Any thoughts, questions, comments about this abatement request in terms of compliance? I would say that the estimated and actual current number of employees, the actual is greater than what was estimated, and the salaries is roughly 2.5 times what was estimated, right? So I think they're in pretty good shape there. So again, if we feel good about a particular CF1 and their standing, then I think we could just offer a motion to move forward and accept it as presented, and that they are substantially in compliance.
Mr. President, I so move that we move forward that they appear to be in compliance. That Steel Dynamics Heartland Incorporated still appears to be in compliance.
Thank you.
Second.
So we have a motion on the floor by Councilman Wilson, a second by Councilman Thompson, that Steel Dynamics Heartland LLC is in compliance, substantial compliance. Any questions or comments before we move forward? We have a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Norris,
Aye.
Ms. Thies,
Aye.
Ms. Swager,
Aye.
Ms. Wilson,
Aye.
Mr. Thompson,
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk.
Aye, motion carries. Next, Advix Manufacturing Indiana LLC. Again, this is personal property. It's on page 6 of our booklet. Again, in looking at this, estimated and actual on the form CF1, current employees versus estimated, the actual is higher, as is the salaries. I'll offer this time for any discussion, comments, or concerns you may have.
Is it am I reading it wrong? The actual employee count is actually 3 less than?
Well, I was looking at the current number of employees, and I think it's,
A bit higher. I think that might be.
so I think that I'm looking at the current. and
Transposition?
Yeah,
Because what the handout shows that the estimate's
Right.
451, but in the book, it says 415.
Right.
I'm not sure which is accurate.
do
Transposition number.
you happen to know, Calissa? Because it does say, I don't know which one's transposed there.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, yeah.
Pretty shy.
does appear that there are 3 fewer than they estimated. They estimated 451, and they actually have 448. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. So the form they submit looks a little bit different than what we're looking at here in the
But
handout.
They're still
They're
3 short of
basically-
their estimate.
But they're basically in compliance.
Yeah, I
Is
think,
there-
and I think that's the question, are they substantially
there-
in compliance? And I think too, you look at the
The salaries.
estimated versus actual salaries as well.
Can I ask a point of order, a
Sure,
question?
sure.
Is there a certain tolerance that we need to be aware of to say that they are in compliance? I mean, is this,
The lawyer has gone.
I don't believe there is any guidelines, and I think it's, the legislation was passed with that in mind. I think it's just substantial compliance. And if it went to a hearing, it would also be whether they have made reasonable efforts to be in substantial compliance. And if not, then were there factors that caused them not to be in substantial compliance? So
substantial?
with all that in
subjective?
mind, I think
Pretty, yeah.
there's certainly enough here to find they're in substantial compliance if that's what you wish.
Thank you.
Any further questions or comments? If not, I would accept a motion at this time.
So moved.
Second.
So, motion on the floor is that they are to move forward, and we believe they are substantially compliant. Is that correct?
Correct.
Motion on the floor by Councilwoman Wager, second by Councilwoman Thies. There's no further comments or questions. I'd ask for a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Norris,
Aye.
Ms. Thies,
Aye.
Ms. Sweger,
Aye.
Ms. Wilson,
Aye.
Mr. Thompson,
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk.
Aye, motion carries. Thank you. Next, we have Federico Recycling Midwest, Inc., personal property, and it is a 2014 abatement. So we have 2 for them, a 2014 and a 2019. 2014 is on page 8. And again, this is a personal property abatement. Any thoughts or comments about what you have before you?
Mr. President, it looks like the 2014 is in compliance
Okay.
based on employee count and salary.
Would you like to make a motion?
I will make a motion.
Second.
So a motion on the floor by Councilwoman Thies, second by Councilwoman Wager, that we move forward and accept it as being in compliance. Any thoughts or questions? Having none, I ask for a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Norris,
Aye.
Ms. Thies,
Aye.
Ms. Sweger,
Aye.
Ms. Wilson,
Aye.
Mr. Thompson,
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk.
Aye, motion carries. Thank you. As I stated earlier, we have also a 2019 compliance review for them on page 10 in your booklet. And this too is for personal property. Any thoughts or comments about what you have before you?
Mr. President, it appears to me that, I don't know if it's the same situation where they estimated 32 and that they would maintain 1. That's why we have a 33 employee estimate with a 31 actual. The salaries are actually less as well by $250, $300. Again, is that something that is just extenuating circumstances that we aren't aware of, but it's close enough to be in compliance?
I think that's just going to be subjective and at the tolerance of the council. And In looking at that, it's about 300,000 less in actual salaries, and the project cost was about 800,000 less than estimated. I think we just need to determine whether or not we feel it's substantially compliant or not, and go from there. Again, that it's going to be subjective.
Mr. President, I want to clarify one thing I said before, and that is, your first obligation is to determine whether they are substantially compliant with the statement of benefits. And then the second part of that is if they fail to substantially comply, if that was caused by factors beyond their control.
So I think they could fall into many categories. Obviously, last year with it being COVID, they could be in transition here, trying to find additional employees. Maybe some just retired. I mean, there could be a host of circumstances or reasons as to why they are two less than what they had estimated.
Mr. President, believe in the circumstances, we need to give them the benefit of the doubt, and I make a motion that we approve this report.
Motion on the floor by Councilwoman Wager,
I'll second.
second by Councilwoman Thies. There's no further discussion. I'd ask for a roll call vote, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Ms. Wager,
Aye.
Ms. Wilson,
Aye.
Mr. Thompson,
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk.
Aye, motion carries. Thank you. Moving on, page 12, Casey's Marketing Company, personal property. They have two before us. Personal property is on page 12 of your booklet, and the real property on page 14 of your booklet. So first, the real property. Please state any thoughts or concerns you may have at this time. Yeah, it's back. I said it backwards. I apologize. Real property's on page 14, personal property's on page 12. So first, review the personal property. Any thoughts or questions about that?
Make a motion that we approve.
Second.
Motion on the floor by Councilman Thompson to approve the Casey's Marketing Company personal property. They're in compliance, a second by Councilwoman Wager. There are not any additional thoughts or comments. I'd ask for a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Norris,
Aye.
Ms. Thies,
Aye.
Ms. Wager,
Aye.
Ms. Wilson,
Aye.
Mr. Thompson,
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk.
Aye, motion carries. Next one is the real property for Casey's Marketing Company. And it looks like it was regarding the construction of a 250,000 to 300,000 square foot warehouse distribution facility.
Council President, I make a motion that we approve.
I'll second.
Motion to approve by Councilman Thompson, second by Councilwoman Wilson. Comments, thoughts, or questions? Having none, I ask for a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Norris,
Aye.
Ms. Thies,
Aye.
Ms. Wager,
Aye.
Ms. Wilson,
Aye.
Mr. Thompson,
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk.
Aye, motion carries. Next, we have Futrix Industries, Inc. Real property is on page 16 of your booklet, and they also have personal property on page 18. We'll address the real property first. Any thoughts, comments, or questions regarding what you have before you?
Mr. President, I move to approve this as the
Second.
So a motion on the floor by Councilwoman Wilson to approve, second by Councilman Thompson. additional comments, questions? Having none, ask for roll call vote, please.
Mr. Norris,
Aye.
Ms. Thies,
Aye.
Ms. Wager,
Aye.
Ms. Wilson,
Aye.
Mr. Thompson,
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk.
Aye, motion carries. Thank you. We have the personal property request from FutureX. Page 18. If there are no comments or questions, I'd entertain motion.
President Loudermilk, I'd make a motion to accept it.
Second.
So we have a motion by Councilman Norris to approve this, second by Councilman Thompson. If there are no questions or comments, I'd ask for roll call vote, please.
Mr. Norris,
Aye.
Ms. Thies,
Aye.
Ms. Wager,
Aye.
Ms. Wilson,
Aye.
Mr. Thompson,
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk.
Aye, motion carries. Next, you have Select Genetics LLC, personal property. Request is on page 19, and the compliance statement for the real property is on page 20. We'll handle the personal property first. Please address any concerns you may have, make any comments you may have, and if there are none, I would accept the motion at this time.
So moved.
Second.
So we have before us a motion from Councilman Thompson to approve, second by Councilwoman Wilson. There are no additional comments. I'd ask for roll call vote, please.
Mr. Norris,
Aye.
Ms. Thies,
Aye.
Ms. Wager,
Aye.
Ms. Wilson,
Aye.
Mr. Thompson,
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk.
Aye, motion carries. Next, you have the real property compliance statement from Select Genetics LLC. If you have any questions or comments, please state them at this time. If not, I would entertain a motion to approve this compliance statement.
So moved.
Motion on the floor to approve by Councilman Thompson, second by Councilwoman Wilson. If there are no comments or questions, I'd ask for roll call vote, please.
Mr. Norris,
Aye.
Ms. Thies,
Aye.
Ms. Wager,
Aye.
Ms. Wilson,
Aye.
Mr. Thompson,
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Next, we have two from ThyssenKrupp Presta North America LLC. The first on page 22 is personal property, and then on page 24 you have real property. First, we'll deal with the personal property request. If there are no concerns, questions, or comments, I would entertain a motion to approve the personal property compliance statement.
Council President, I have a question.
Sure.
Are the numbers on this right? It looks like the employee count, 268, and the salary that's listed there doesn't really correspond with the actual number of 221 in the salary.
So they amended the actual column, but they didn't do anything with, yes, the SP. But in totality, I mean, at least in numbers of, well, actually, they're down. Yeah, they estimated 268, have 221. but according to their numbers, they're a lot higher pay, so
A higher pay.
I still don't understand it, but this was a little bit of a battle to get this far.
We have 2.5 times.
Yeah, so in reviewing this, obviously the employee count is down, but the salaries are up substantially from estimated, which I guess could or could not be correct. And the estimated project cost versus actual is quite a bit different, but the AV is the same on each.
Yeah. I mean, quite honestly, to me, I think there's problems with it first, but. Because if you look at personal property and real property, the same. That's not normal.
And again, as stated earlier, if you don't feel comfortable as to how things are listed on the CF1, we could always ask that they come in August and explain further, so we get clarification. I mean, these are big numbers, obviously.
Mr. President, considering I think Calissa has made a substantial effort to discuss how to fill this form out, and they are not doing it accurately, I would suggest that we call them in August and have them explain, not accept this as presented. That's my motion.
So, Mr. Effner, would it be appropriate to, if it was the desire of the council, to essentially table this until further discussion and review in August? Is that probably the appropriate motion? Or could we just not approve it and then ask them to appear in August for a compliance hearing?
Quite honestly, that's president, as to have this discussion in 5 days. I don't necessarily see the problem. I mean, you have reviewed it. Twice.
Right.
And again,
Page 23, maybe, or it's the second page, like the backside of the document. It has the instructions necessary.
Which one?
according
Okay,
to
so we
this,
So you
need
send
to
a written
send them a
notice.
letter.
and 45 days designated body. But I've not reviewed the case law. But
Well, if I'm going to interrupt, the second part of this instruction says that they are not found to be substantial compliance, the designating body shall send the property owner written notice. The notice must include the reason for the determination, date, time, and place of the hearing to be conducted by the designated body. I would like to move that we send them a letter and request that they attend our meeting in August to explain the discrepancies in their form.
I think what is on here is taken from the statute, and that contemplates that fine not in. And then
Okay.
set a hearing. Okay, why are fine not in? And they can have, that take place on days. The notice is mailed. So
Okay.
I'm not exactly sure. I think we have the option of determining whether, or making a motion and determine they are not in compliance. alternative is request come in, explain prior to making that determination. Quite honestly, I think so on that. But that is, because the statute doesn't address it. So you could certainly find not, find, or you could request, and
And the different outcome of that would be what? If we say you're not in compliance, then can they resubmit, or,
if we say they're not in compliance, we basically said, okay, then they come in and defend the position while they are. At that point in time, you determine whether or not, based on the evidence that they, because they are, even though you found it or not, set a hearing, then they have to see. You're either in compliance or there are factors behind your control that cause.
and that hearing has to be within 30 days of today?
This has
Or
to
the-
be
of the
within 30
letter?
days, the date notice.
Which would require, if we were to do that, it would require a special call in July, or the end of this
That's
month.
necessarily the case, I think. As I recall, the statute reads within 30 days of the date of notice sent. So I suppose in place notice.
August.
So as Mr. Appner is looking at that,
The designated body is required to mail, okay, if we find that they're not in substantial compliance, we're required to mail written notice to the property owner which explains the reason for the decision, says the date which must be within 30 days of mailing, time and place for a hearing to be held by the designated body for the decision. Because it still talks about hearing must be within 30 days of mailing. It doesn't say how fast you have.
I was gonna say, so, would I have to incorporate the notice be mailed July 15th to ask them to appear at our August sunshine meeting, or August meeting? Okay. Convoluted.
I would say hearing
Ahead of the regular meeting.
Mr. President, have we had a problem with Francis Rupp before?
I can't say for sure.
Anybody recall?
Not that I recall.
I mean, I think they're a pretty substantial company.
Well, I just know that Calissa's made several attempts to help them fill out this form. They still haven't managed to do it correctly.
And it may be that if they're going off their SB one, if the SB one reported, correct? That could have been possible. Technically, they're completing it as was estimated on the SB one, but if the SB is incorrect, then they've still met that requirement.
Are we jeopardizing their abatement in any way?
Well, we still have, not, if you make a determination they're not substantial compliant, they still have an opportunity to confirm that, say,
assuming that they cure it. Okay. May I try to
Yes,
reword this?
absolutely.
When you
Okay,
review it,
I would like to move that
you did.
Tyson Prep is, that we send a notice to them, a written notice, 30 days prior to our August meeting, asking them to attend a special call meeting just ahead of the regular meeting to explain the discrepancies.
No, we don't want that.
Oh, it can't, it doesn't have to be ahead of it? Okay, okay. Okay. That we send a letter 30 days prior to our next meeting in August, asking them to explain the discrepancies in this form that was submitted, and that we not approve it at this time.
Second.
Is everyone clear?
Can't blame you if you're not.
So make sure. If there's no questions or concerns about the motion on the floor.
So, Mr. President, I want to clarify that at this hearing, pretty much if they come in and clarify the numbers, then we can still approve the abatement.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
my
my
understanding.
intention.
Right. They're not at jeopardy right now. We're
Okay.
just asking for the explanation. And in fact, if we did turn it down right now, they still have the opportunity to state their case before
Okay.
us. I think this just gives them the opportunity to clean things up and give a presentation in which we may be more comfortable at that time.
Okay.
There's no further comments or questions. And just to be clear, that is for both
The real
CF1 forms, right?
Yes,
The
yes,
personal property and real property?
yes.
Okay. Just so everybody's aware. That's for both compliance statements we have before us. Can I have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Norris,
Aye.
Stees,
Aye.
Ms. Swager,
Aye.
Ms. Wilson,
Aye.
Mr. Thompson,
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Next up, we have Tagleaf Industries, Inc., personal property. It's on page 26 of your booklet. Please address any thoughts or concerns you may have at this time, any questions you may have.
Mr. President, to clarify, we're looking at the 2012
Correct.
abatement, is that correct?
Yes. It's 2012-10 is a resolution number. And I think you see on the insert, there are a couple other listings for them. There was an abatement granted 2018 for real and personal property. Estimated employee count at that time was 400. You see what the salaries was to look like. Estimated project cost. They have not started that yet. It appears as though they filed for permit in March of this year to begin work. So if you're looking for a compliance statement for those two, we don't have any because they have not started as of yet.
Good question.
Sure.
Well, with Okay, when the abatement was issued, was there a time frame for when they were supposed to have started?
It
Do you
was-
recall, it was at the end of last year?
They were supposed to have it completed by December 20, according to the estimate.
And they're just now starting it?
Well, they have, yeah, they just
Or good, the permit?
filed for permit in March, so I would assume that they've begun construction, but it's my understanding the agreement was that they would have everything completed by the end of last year, which clearly they have not, having
Yeah.
not submitted a compliance statement to us and just filing for permit several months ago.
They did send an email that, they were behind schedule and that had to go through the process of deconstruction of the line.
Should have probably known that was first. Mr. President, based on this discussion, I'm going to make a motion that they are not in compliance, because they have not followed through with the initial parameters of the abatement, how to complete, much less started.
That's a separate abatement.
Oh,
Yeah,
I'm sorry,
so-
we're on a different
Yeah,
issue. Okay, I apologize.
So,
Yeah.
I guess we,
apologize.
let's discuss this one first. Just so everybody's clear, yeah, so the 2012, as you see, is 2012-10 is the resolution number on the compliance statement of benefits, personal property form. I guess maybe we'll handle that one first, and we can discuss the other. Any thoughts or questions about that? What's the information contained on page 26?
President Loudermilk,
Yes, Councilman Norris.
I do note that their estimate on the SB1 was 463, that their employee count currently was 400. Their salaries are about 1.5 million over what they had estimated, but that they are 63 employees shy of what they had estimated.
Yes, that's what I'm seeing as well. And that was a 10-year abatement, correct?
Correct.
So they are, in theory, at the end of the life cycle of that 2012 request.
I believe they're in year 9.
Year 9. So certainly, if it's the pleasure of the council to say that you do not feel they are in compliance at this time with the 2012 abatement, then you can entertain a motion to such and vote accordingly. And then if in fact the council decides they feel like they're not in compliance, then they may be offered the opportunity to come in and explain their situation and their standing.
President Loudermilk, another quick question. Over the past 9 years, do we have an employee count of where they've been at? I mean, have they always been under on their employee count, or is this year through COVID and having a hard time finding employees, is that why they're off?
They filed for, when they filed for their abatement in 2018, they were 400 employees then.
So it hasn't changed.
I can't say for certain. I wouldn't be held to it, I would hope, but I have the sense that they have always been low, from what I recall. And that's sometimes not the best recall, but when I recall, I think they've always been lower than estimated. It's my recollection.
Mr. President,
Councilman Wilson?
I just personally don't feel comfortable assuming what the situation is with each of these companies. I mean, if they're close, like a few of these were, that we said they were in compliance because the tolerance was very, very slim, this seems to be a wider margin, and I would like to move that we not approve this. submission and have them explain.
So a motion on the floor by Councilwoman Wilson to not accept the compliance statement of benefits provided concerning Resolution 2012-10. Ask that a letter be sent to them and have them appear before us at our August meeting.
Hold second.
Second on the floor by Councilman Thompson. Any further thoughts, questions, or discussion?
So to clarify again, that if at the meeting they provide enough reasoning or data, then we can continue to approve it. This will just be for them to come.
Is that the correct assumption, Mr. Afner, that we suggest they are not in compliance, they have the opportunity to state their case, and their abatement is not in jeopardy at this time?
Mr. President, can we include the other two at this time, or do we want to do them separately as well?
I
Since
think we could, while they're here, ask them to clarify the delay, because in essence, they have started after they told us they could complete the project.
And they apparently had 2 years to, without COVID, 18 and 19, that they could have started it at least prior
Correct.
to this year. Would it be wrong to include all three of these in one motion, that we not approve all of them, or do we need to do them separately?
You already have the motion on the board, you'd have to
Okay,
make a separate
okay.
motion.
Got a motion and a second. Any other questions or comments? Ask for roll call vote, please.
Mr. Norris,
Aye.
Ms. Thies,
Aye.
Ms. Swager,
Aye.
Ms. Wilson,
Aye.
Mr. Thompson,
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk.
Aye. Motion carries. As discussed, Tagleaf Industries, Inc. was awarded 2 abatements, 2018. Resolution 2018-04, real property, and 2018-05, personal property. We discussed what we know to be the case at this time. We are going to send a letter to them regarding resolution number 2012-10. Do we also want to include in the letter that they address these 2 2018 abatements that were approved?
President Loudermilk, I make a motion that we also send, included in that letter, that we need explanation on 2018-04 and 2018-05 of the resolution numbers, and ask for them to also give us explanation at the hearing.
Is there a second?
Second.
So we have a motion on the floor by Councilman Norris, a second by Councilman Wilson. If there are no further comments or questions, I'd ask for roll call vote, please.
Mr. Norris,
Aye.
Ms. Thies,
Aye.
Ms. Swager,
Aye.
Ms. Wilson,
Aye.
Mr. Thompson,
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Moving on, we have 2 from Saturn Pet Care. Saturn Pet Care, Inc., real property and personal property. Page 27, you will see an email communication from Saturn Pet Care representative regarding their situation and where they're at in terms of employee counts and payroll totals. And then on page 28, you will see the statement of benefits for the real property. And the personal property is on page 30. I think the email gives some insight as to what is going on there, and they're working towards the goal of 200 employees by year 5. It says as of December 2020, it's 65 employees. As of June 2021, they have 117, which is a substantial increase in 6 months. Open this time up for any thoughts, questions, comments, concerns you may have.
And
regarding this.
Real quick too, on Saturn Pet Care on their personal property, the line that, they put in was not, for the equipment that was on that line was not operational and productive until the end of March, early April of this year. So it is not eligible for an abatement yet. They don't have to file the personal property. But there's two schools of thought, as whether or not they need to file a compliance form, even if it's not in production yet. And so I asked them just to avoid confusion to file it anyway on the personal property, but there's no filing of personal property, there's no ERA, because it's not eligible to be assessed until January 1 of 21 for January 1 of 22, 23. So, but they've got it just so that they're in compliance with, so, because like I said, we have two different opinions on whether or not they need to file the CF1 if it's not in production. So, just to be clear, we're covered. There's no personal property to be abated on them yet, but they do have real property.
Council President, I'll make a motion that we approve.
Second.
Motion on the floor to approve by Councilman Thompson, second by Councilwoman Thies. There are no comments or questions. I'd ask for a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Norris,
Aye.
Ms. Thies,
Aye.
Ms. Swager,
Aye.
Ms. Wilson,
Aye.
Mr. Thompson,
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk.
Aye, motion carries. Thank you. Next, we have the personal property statement of benefits for Saturn Pet Care.
Mr. President, as given the information that Melissa provided, I move that we approve this if they are in compliance.
Second.
Motion on the floor by Councilwoman Wilson to move forward as being substantially compliant, second by Councilman Thompson. There are no additional comments, concerns, thoughts. I'd ask for a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Norris,
Aye.
Ms. Thies,
Aye.
Ms. Swager,
Aye.
Ms. Wilson,
Aye.
Mr. Thompson,
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk.
Aye, motion carries. Next, we have D&D Automation, Inc., personal property on page 32 of your booklets. Some of you may be familiar with this company. It is a local company that has taken off here in recent years. We approved an abatement request in 2019. It looks like, reviewing the CF1 form, actual completion date for the project is set for December 20th this year. Although their employee count is 3 less than estimated, I would say they are in fair shape, pretty good shape in consideration of it being a new project.
I had the opportunity to speak with the owner, and he did mention that because of contracts that they weren't able to fill, or they were subcontracting for somebody and they were not able to get the supplies and things like that for COVID. That's part of the problem with employment numbers.
President Loudermilk, am I correct? Were they just awarded a new contract also? Was that in the news, or was in the process just recently?
I did not see that. I know they're very active and they do get a lot of work.
I also know that Senator Ford is helping them get licensed for military contracts
yeah,
from
that's-
Indiana
I would say that,
Economic Development.
yeah, I would say that their numbers will probably continue to increase.
For
I mean, I
sure.
know they're off just a little bit by about $45,000, but I would make a motion that we accept their abatement as it is.
I second the
time.
motion.
So we have a motion on the floor by Councilman Norris, a second by Councilman Wager. Any additional thoughts or questions? Having none, ask for roll call vote, please.
Mr. Norris?
Aye.
Ms. Dees?
Aye.
Ms. Swager?
Aye.
Ms. Wilson?
Aye.
Mr. Thompson?
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk?
Aye, motion carries. The last one, page 34, Midwest Investments, real property. Again, this is tied to the same company for the same project.
Mr. President, I move that we approve this.
Second.
Motion on the floor to approve as presented, being substantially in compliance by Councilwoman Wilson, second by Councilwoman Wager. If there are no comments or questions, I'd ask for a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Norris?
Aye.
Ms. Dees?
Aye.
Ms. Swager?
Aye.
Ms. Wilson?
Aye.
Mr. Thompson?
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk?
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Moving on.
Councilman Laudermilk.
Yes.
Real quick, I just want to touch upon the last two companies that were on your summary sheet. You have Meridian Brick, or Boral Brick. It was formerly known as Boral Brick. They had an abatement from 2006 for personal property that it was still in existence. They did not file their ERA form, which is a form that's claiming that they are eligible for an abatement, so they didn't file that, and they did not file any personal property. So that abatement is finished unless, for some reason, they were to file an amended return. And then the same would be with Danisco. They did not file any paperwork on personal property. So at this point, there's nothing to abate. So there's nothing, I mean, there's no CF1 to go along with it either, so.
Thank you. Any questions about that before we move forward?
Excuse me, I do, so as far as housekeeping, have they had an abatement prior to that? Is there-
Yes, they have.
So
They've
there
had
is there anything that needs to be set in motion to make sure that their abatement stops, since they didn't file that? Is there a follow-through process?
Boral Brick was pretty much on the tail end of theirs, because with it being it was originally approved in 2006, and you have established set of equipment that can be abated. Well, if they purchase that anytime within that 10-year period, they can apply for the abatement. So while the equipment doesn't get abated any longer than 10 years, that abatement can last 20 years. So, because of different pools of equipment purchases. So they're at the tail end anyway, so I believe that this may finish them off.
Just automatically would fall off the books? Okay, thank you.
In the same way with Danisco, they're, so.
Moving on, ordinances relating to appropriations. First up, salary ordinance 2021-13, ROC 2021-26, Vigo County Health Department. Also, from the Health Department is the additional appropriation ordinance attached to that, 2021-17, ROC 2021-26. Does everyone recall what this, it's been some time, I know. Everybody remember what this was and what it was concerning? You should have an insert from WIS that is not attached to the booklet. It's a memo that provides a summary of their findings, and then at the end, there are a couple of options that they also gave as recommendations. Has everyone had a chance to review that? And the request is to, in the salary ordinance piece, would be to amend the compensation for the environmental health supervisor from $44,090 a year to $48,900 a year. I'd offer this time for comments or questions. Ms. Wise is here to speak if we have any questions from her. Just maybe to start, the first option is to move the environmental health specialist positions back to Pat A classification where originally classified, freeze the incumbent salaries until the market catches up with the current salary. This will allow the environmental health supervisor's annual salary to move gradually with the other like-factored Pat B positions.
And that option would give this supervisor only a $200 increase over her reports.
So option 2, keep classification for both environmental health specialist and environmental health supervisor positions at Pat B, but set the environmental health supervisor position salary at a higher rate within the Pat B salary range to address the pay issue. 2015 compensation study, the Pat B external midpoint salary is $47,095, and the external salary range established was $42,386 to $54,159. And that was 2015. So the request is to move to $48,900.
Mr. President, in looking at the process that we went through and sending this to WIS and the options that were given, it appears, unless I'm seeing it wrong, that it falls within the guidelines of what WIS has recommended.
So based upon what you're seeing, then you have the opportunity to approve the salary ordinance as presented. And again, there would be no change in classification factors for any employees. Everything would stay the same. It would just separate the salary compensation for the supervisor over the specialist, as I think we all agreed was appropriate.
And can we incorporate in the motion that it be retroactive to the date of her accepting the hire?
I think that's absolutely appropriate. I think we need to
That's-
determine when that is. I don't know if I assume her hire date and the date in which she became a supervisor were not the same, were they? Or were they?
Her hire date, no, that has been an employee for over 14 years.
I wasn't aware of that. Okay.
That'd be a good
I
idea.
don't think you can
Yeah,
go
because
back.
if she had been a new hire, she would have been making substantially less than her reports.
Right. Okay.
Go
How far
January
of
1.
this year?
President, I'd like to move that we approve the salary request, making the salary retroactive to January 1st of this year.
So that's amending section 3 to effective date of January 1, 2021,
Yes.
salary
Yes.
ordinance?
Yes.
They do that.
Do we probably need to amend that first?
Section-
Amend section 3.
Okay.
okay. For 2 seconds.
Okay. Okay, I'd like to withdraw that motion so that we can make it more clear.
So if we can clean up section 3 of salary ordinance 2021-13, The effective date, rather than June 16th of 2021, January 1st of 2021. So
So moved.
there's a motion on the floor to amend Section 3, Salary Ordinance 2021-13, from June 16th, 2021 to January 1st, 2021, effective date.
Second.
Motion on the floor by Councilman Wilson, second by Councilman Thompson. Any questions, thoughts? I'd ask for roll call vote, please.
Mr. Norris?
Aye.
Ms. Thies?
Aye.
Ms. Swager?
Aye.
Ms. Wilson?
Aye.
Mr. Thompson?
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk?
Aye.
Thank you very
So it has
much.
been amended.
Okay.
Not done
Now-
yet.
Okay. Now, Mr. President, I'd
Oh,
like
that's
to,
right.
I move that, is it 2021-26?
No, we,
No,
so
no.
you've amended it, so
Salary
now we
amended.
can vote on the amended.
Salary rate is 2021-13, where are we, 13? That we approve the request of $48,900 per year, retroactive to January 1st, 2021,
As amended,
as amended.
yes.
I second.
Motion on the floor by Councilwoman Wilson, second by Councilwoman Thies. Any thoughts or questions? Having none, ask for roll call vote, please.
Mr. Norris?
Aye.
Ms. Thies?
Aye.
Ms. Swager?
Aye.
Ms. Wilson?
Aye.
Mr. Thompson?
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk?
Aye. Motion carries. So now you have the additional appropriation ordinance 2021-17, ROC 2021-26. So we have an advertised amount.
You're going to probably have to come back and add to it later.
Just appropriate additional funds later in August.
No, I think you're good, because it was just put in, actually, it might have been the original request. The original request, they included longevity in the total.
Yeah, and we
so-
took it out.
So
Okay,
there,
so-
this is sufficient to cover.
Okay, that's good. So with that, I'd accept a motion at this time to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Motion on the floor to approve by Councilman Thompson, second by Councilman Norris. If there are no questions or comments, I'd ask for roll call vote, please.
Mr. Norris?
Aye.
Ms. Thies?
Aye.
Ms. Swager?
Aye.
Ms. Wilson?
Aye.
Mr. Thompson?
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk?
Aye, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next up, we have request from the prosecutor's office. It is additional appropriation ordinance 2021-18 ROC 2021-28, Vigo County Prosecutor. If you recall, and let me just say that I talked to Chief Deputy Prosecutor Rob Roberts today. He had an unexpected committee meeting this afternoon that was going to keep him from attending the meeting. Asked if I felt like there needed to be a representative here, and I told him I did not. It seemed like he explained it pretty well last week, and everybody seemed to be satisfied with his explanation. It seemed pretty clean. So I hope I didn't misspeak, and if I did, I'll try to clean up anything. And if we can't get there, I guess we can always hear it later. But this is the return of fugitives line item, if you recall. There's no questions, comments. I would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Councilman Thompson moves to approve, second by Councilwoman Wilson. If there's no comments or questions, I'd ask for a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Norris?
Aye.
Ms. Thies?
Aye.
Swager?
Aye.
Ms. Wilson?
Aye.
Mr. Thompson?
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk?
Aye, motion carries. Next is another request from the prosecutor's office. Additional appropriation ordinance 2021-19, ROC 2021-29, seized asset fund. As you recall, it was essentially moving the money around. It was $50,000. Again, I think Mr. Roberts explained it. Everyone with satisfaction last week. If there are any questions or comments, I'd be happy to try to help out here.
President Loudermilk, I'll make a motion to move the funds around to the total seized assets fund for appropriation ordinance 2021-19.
Second.
So a motion to approve by Councilman Norris, second by Councilman Wilson. There are no additional thoughts or comments. I'd ask for roll call vote, please.
Mr. Norris,
Aye.
Steves,
Aye.
Swigger,
Aye.
Ms. Wilson,
Aye.
Mr. Thompson,
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk.
Aye, motion carries. Last, we have before us salary ordinance 2021-14, ROC 2021-30, Beaver County Clerk. As you might recall, it was a request to concern the deputy clerks, deputy clerk assistant supervisor, deputy clerk supervisor, to amend classifications along with the salaries. Spoke about that last week. We have a representative, a couple representatives from the clerk's office here. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. Open up this time for questions or comments.
I'm going to state the same thing that I stated last week, that I believe that this is an example, another example of the need to have the whole salary issue reevaluated by WIS. Across the board.
The one thing, Bob Live, Supervisor of the Clerk's Office, the one thing we were asking for is equal pay for equal work. And I went back and got some information here. This is from the Indiana Supreme Court. It's about webinars and so forth that our people have. And indications in there, both the clerk and the court staff. All we're asking for is equal.
Thank you.
And it's addressed to both the court staff and the clerks. And that's all we're asking for.
Mr. President?
Yes.
Having worked in the court system myself, I do know, and I agree with you, that the clerks are everywhere, and they know so much, and they have to know so much. And I also believe that things have changed dramatically since we originally did this WIS review. And I really believe that if it were to be re-reviewed and recalculated, the salaries would be increased. I just strongly believe that. And if as long as it's really emphasized to all of the employees as well as all of the managers and supervisors that these requests for job descriptions is as thorough as it can possibly be, then I think they will, the salaries will be commensurate and we'd be satisfied. I believe, I have confidence in the WIS procedures.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments, thoughts?
Mr. President,
Councilman Wager?
I think it might be advisable to solicit proposals from other organizations besides WIS. They're not the only company that does that sort of thing. I mean, I think perhaps the employees of Vigo County may feel like we should get other bids from companies who do that, if that's the way we're going to go. I think, they feel like they've been beat up pretty badly by WIS, quite honestly.
Do you have any
Just a thought.
recommendations?
I have no idea. I don't know. That's not, I don't have a lot of faith in them myself. I've been hearing this, I mean, I feel like these people have been underpaid for years and years and years, and years and years and years and years. And years. We have to address this. We have to address this. We're sitting here at the budget time. We're getting ready to address, getting ready to do the budget. I think we better hop on it and get it done.
Mr. President, can I?
Yes.
Address them? I think we definitely need some sort of system to keep things consistent and fair. And through that process, we just did that with the health department request. I don't know the process if we were to look at what Councilwoman Wager had said about, other companies or not. That's beyond what I know. I just think we need to have a process to keep things as consistent and the guidelines as possible.
Thank you.
Has this been sent to WIS?
No, it's not been sent to WIS.
Fr- Were the forms filled out correctly? Is that the reason why they were not?
Right, I had requested the job maintenance review forms from the department, and I received those this morning, but they were not signed by the employees, and they're supposed to be signed by any employees that are currently in those positions.
So once they are signed, then we can send them to WIS, correct?
Yes.
Go ahead, I was going to make a motion.
No, I was gonna make a motion too, so you go ahead.
I would make a motion, if we're waiting on WIS, that these, that it be sent to WIS. If you've got the forms now,
I don't have them signed.
once they need to be signed. So that, I would make a motion that this is tabled until the August meeting. That will give them time to sign the papers and for them to be sent to WIS.
Second.
So my motion's to table.
Second.
And send it meanwhile.
Yes.
Okay. Second.
One thing, President Loudermilk, if we did that, is this something where we could make it retro back to this date to help them out? If WIS's research comes back as saying that that's suggested, we could make it retro back since they've asked for it at this meeting, and it'll be obviously at August.
Yeah, I think you could make it retroactive to today's date. On this, it says the effective date of June 15th of this year. Or you could do as what we did with the health department, so choose. I think you have, right. I think you could either go with the date in August, you could go with the date here, June 15th, or go back to January 1. I'm sure they would appreciate January 1 the most.
Most assuredly.
Yep.
Right. So we have a motion on the floor and a second. Any additional comments, questions? Appears to be none. I'd ask for a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Norris,
Aye.
Ms. Thies,
Aye.
Ms. Wager,
Aye.
Ms. Wilson,
Aye.
Mr. Thompson,
Aye.
Mr. Loudermilk.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to honorary resolutions, there are none. Resolutions relating to fiscal policies of the council, there are none. Appointments, there are none. So with that, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's It's adjourned by Councilman Thompson, and second by Councilman Wilson. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, meeting adjourned.